Beliefs about vampires, werewolves, witches, and wizards are widespread.
Exactly what is a serial killer?
Our house was 2 rooms, and there was 7 of us.
He held the bat like this.
That's why I have characters who sort of expose themselves.
And everybody always said, Coach Carter, Samuel Jackson is taller than you. I said, I know, but I think I'm better looking.
So I'm going to talk about motivation, and it's something that maybe we don't always think too much about, but I will talk about motivation in a little bit more complex way, and then I'll talk a little bit about what it takes to be motivated, and how can you maybe beef up your motivation for whatever it is that you want to be more motivated for, right? So what is motivation? Well, clearly motivation is somewhat important in our society based on the number of books that are out there about motivation. Your mindset and motivation, change your body, change your life. Self-improvement and motivation for success. Improve and motivate yourself for a more successful life. If you never know failure, you will never know success. Mastering the art of motivation. The motivational book, and there's a really long subtitle under it. And there's my book, the Motivational Interviewing Workbook, Exercises to Decide What You Want and How to Get There, and I'm going to give away a free copy of that when I'm done today. There's also poems about motivation, and apparently to be successful, you have to realize that life is really hard. It is based on ups and downs, but it's hard when you give up and you stick to your thoughts that this is hard. But if you accept you can do it and it is easy, you will achieve your main motivation in life. Those who work hard and they put all their effort in their work, they will succeed and they will reach their destination. And those who are lazy, don't know the importance of education, they will never succeed and they will stay behind, craving to get further. So accept whatever comes in life, work hard with all your strength. Don't think from the brain, think from the heart that represent who we are. Beat the rest, be the best, have motivation, reach your destination, and success will follow you. So apparently if you're motivated enough, you are automatically assured to be successful, right? So anybody extra motivated now? Are you inspired yet? So a lot of times we think about motivation and we think about willpower, right? If you want to succeed, you want to change something, then you just need enough willpower. Well, or maybe you don't. So apparently, according to Benjamin Hardy, willpower doesn't work. So I'm not sure where that leaves you, right? So there's also the thought of, well, motivation for what, right? Not just success in general, but we think about motivations of the characters in our movies, right? My daughter does theater, and she thinks about what is her character's motivation, right? Who is this person? We want to make sure our employees are motivated, right? So motivation to work. Motivation for your well-being. So we want to make sure you're okay, right? And maybe even your motivation to commit a crime. So there you go, right? So, so motivation is all around us and in different ways. But essentially from all this, we can get that motivation is partly related to our reasons for doing something, right? So what motivates us to do or act in a certain way. So, whether it's something like, if she has issues with trust, it's because she went through a lot in her childhood. Or, his reason to kill his wife and her lover was that he was jealous and angry. So we have reasons, motivations can be our reasons, but motivation is also, how we feel about something, right? That we want or desire something, either to do something or be something. I am motivated to improve my singing voice so I get a good part in the school musical. So I'm motivated, that feeling, right? That I'm interested in something. So I'm going to talk about it in terms of, changing ourselves, our behaviors, and generally what happens is that there may be certain behaviors, actions that sort of habits that we might need to change in order to meet a particular goal. So usually our behaviors are tied to our goals, right? We're goal-oriented kind of people. So I want you to actually stand up if you're able to. Stand where you are. Go ahead, stand up, come on. You don't have to move anywhere else. And I want you to think about a behavior change that you know you should change or should or would like to change, but you haven't. You've not been successful at it. Maybe you've tried, but you've not been successful. So that could include, changing your eating habits to lose weight. It could be exercising more. It could be to be more organized, staying on top of your schoolwork a little bit more, right? It could be trying to do better self-care. Does that make sense? So anything that you would need to do to meet a goal. What do you need to do? So think of something that you are aware of, but you've not been very successful at it, okay? Now I want you to think, how long have you known this? How long have you read? Just kind of estimate in your head. How long have you known that you should or could change this? All right? So if it's been the last 30 days or less, sit down. So this is fairly new that you've thought of. Sit down. Okay. All right, the last 60 days or less, sit down. All right, how about the last 90 days or less, sit down. The last 6 months or less, sit down. 6 months or less. All right, the last 12 months, so the past year or less. Past year or less, okay. How about, let's go 2 years or less. 2 years or less. All right, so I'm not going to call you out, but we can see there's still quite a few people standing that for the past 2 years, there's something you've known you could do or should do and have not succeeded yet, right? Go ahead and sit down. Thank you. So we're going to think about that in just a second. What I do want you to think about is kind of what gets in the way. What keeps you from being successful? So you don't have to say anything yet, but I want you to kind of keep it in mind, right? What are your reasons for not being motivated enough, right? Okay. So we're going to think about motivation. You've probably heard the cliche being ready, willing, and able. Maybe, ready, willing, and able. It's actually a really good way to think about motivation, that motivation is multifaceted, and being ready, willing, and able is a great way to sum it up. I do use this when I train people in motivational interviewing and how we work with our clients or patients and try to assess their level of motivation, that we do try to ask questions and find out how ready, willing, and able are they to make a change. And I'm going to come back to ready in just a second. So, usually when I'm teaching students and we talk about, how do we best help our clients, and usually they'll say, well, they have to be ready. They have to be ready for help, right? And that's true, but there's also other things that need to be there to make that readiness work. So that's what we're going to talk about with being willing and able. So being willing has to do with problem recognition, that either they want something to be different or at the very least recognize that it could be different, right? So this is, problem recognition is the presence of a discrepancy between their reality or the status quo, as I call it, or the difference between their status quo and their ideal. And I don't mean ideal like crazy wild ideas, but a reality ideal, that I really could be thinner than I am. I could be in better shape than I am, right? I could be more organized than I am. That it's a reality, and it's a possible reality, but my current reality doesn't meet that expectation. It doesn't meet what I wish or would like things to be like. And to have that discrepancy, we need to acknowledge it, right? We have to be aware of that difference. And we also often need that discrepancy to be just right. So if you think about Goldilocks and the three bears and the porridge, right? And I'm not going to do the beds, but I'll do the porridge. And you know, when the soup was too hot, the discrepancy is too big, and that's very overwhelming. You know, we typically aren't going to, you know, eat something that's way too hot, right? That's very painful. We're not going to do that. If that discrepancy between my reality and my ideal is way too big, then I may do nothing at all, because it can be quite overwhelming. If that discrepancy is too small, so the porridge is too cold, I could eat it. It's not really going to hurt me, but it's not very enjoyable, right? I may not be that hungry and to eat it. So if it's too small of a discrepancy, it may not bother us enough to mess with it. So we want that discrepancy to be just right. So it needs to bother us just enough to get us to think about doing something different. And when people perceive that discrepancy as being a little bit too small, we often say that those people are in denial or they're resistant. And really that's not true. Really, a lot of times people actually have some recognition. It just may not be that important to them, and we'll get to that in just a second. But ultimately, you know, how do we help them think about their discrepancy being big enough to be a concern? So it's not really denial, it's just, you know, the perception of that discrepancy is a little smaller. Then there's able, and I think this is often what we don't think about when we think about motivation, that somebody has to want something bad enough. Well, yes, they do, but they also need to be confident enough. So if there is not enough confidence, self-efficacy, self-esteem, hope, all of that's tied in together with confidence in our ability to make a change, to be successful at that change. So some changes, particularly, you know, we're kind of thinking about changes that aren't fun to make, right? There's certain changes that might be easy to do because they're fun or enjoyable, but there's a lot of particularly health behavior changes aren't usually that fun. People don't look as much forward to making those changes. So, you know, we might feel a little less confident in our ability to make better food choices, to get up extra early to go exercise, or feeling like, you know, I just don't think I can find enough time or make enough time to focus on being more organized. So people who feel very not confident, we often say they might feel demoralized. So they feel so hopeless, so low in their confidence that they actually can seem very kind of angry when we try to talk to them about change. So if they become defensive, make a lot of rationalizations or reasons why they can't change, that's probably somebody who's lacking confidence, and trying to push them into change or convince them to change isn't going to be helpful, because the issue is that they don't have enough confidence. We have to build their confidence. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So lastly then is ready. So we want people to be willing, so they recognize the discrepancy. They, maybe if they have enough confidence in their ability to make a change, now are they ready? So readiness has to do with making it a priority. So that's where you could see where, yeah, when we think about motivation, we think, how much of a priority is it? Do we all have 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week? And we all have to make decisions about our time, how we spend our time, how we prioritize the different things on our list. And that ultimately whatever I ask you to think about is lower on your list. It's just not at the top. And you would have to move something on your list to a lower position in order to take that, make it a priority, to change, make that behavior change. You have to make it more of a priority. So something could be kind of important, you know we should change it, but it doesn't mean that it's that important right now. So importance and confidence are super key in building our motivation to make a change. So motivation, it is, because it is more about how we feel about a change. It's not a characteristic, it's not a trait. Now there may be some people who seem like it's easier for them to change. My husband is one of those people that when he decides that he's going to do something, he's going to do it all the way. He's not good at making small attempts. He's doing keto right now, and he's like logging everything, and he's very conscious about it. He even does the sticks where you test if you're in ketosis. So he's very like all in. He's an all or nothing person, but most people are not like that. That's actually more the exception than the rule. That most of us need to make changes a little bit at a time, and there's a lot of research that says that's the best way to do it. That it isn't, feet first, just dive in. It's actually, put your toes in the water and see how it feels, and do a little bit at a time, and build those changes slowly. So motivation is something that can be changed. So thinking about that change, now we've talked about problem recognition, importance, and ability. Where do you fall in that? So when you think about the change, I asked you to stand up, right? So now that you think about it, you have at least some discrepancy, or you wouldn't have thought of something, right? So you have some discrepancy. Do you think, is there enough discrepancy there? Is it enough of a concern that says, yeah, I think that's sufficient concern? Or is it still kind of too, like, maybe it's not that big of a deal, right? Or is it super overwhelming for you? Is it too much? So are you willing to change? How confident are you? So is there a confidence issue there? And is it a priority? So maybe, maybe not, right? So a lot of times if you thought of something, when I asked you, what gets in the way, a lot of people say, I don't have time. If you said I don't have time, it's because it's not a priority. If you said, it's just hard, it's too hard, it's scary, something like that, then it's probably a confidence issue. Or it could be both, right? It definitely can be a combination. So thinking about readiness, another way to think about it is where we are in terms of our readiness to make a change. And so I'm just going to quickly talk about the stages of change model, or technically it's the trans-theoretical model of change. But the stages of change model by Prochaska and DiClemente looks at different stages that people go through when they're trying to make a particular behavior change. And so a person who is in pre-contemplation means that they're not thinking about changing anytime soon, usually like in the next 6 months. So they're saying, it doesn't mean that they don't recognize the problem, it just means they're not worried enough about it. It's not something they're ready, willing, or able to work on right now. A person who's in contemplation is thinking about making a change, and this is what motivational interviewing was intended to serve. That this type of population who definitely have at least some concern about something they need to change. Particularly, for example, they worked with people who had, say, alcohol offenses like DWIs, and they may not have been real severe alcohol users, but they used enough that it caused them a problem. And it was often hard to work with them because they weren't, fit under that alcoholic label. So how do you get them to change the way they drink so that they're not drinking and driving? And so that was one of the areas, plus cigarette smoking as well was another big area that they started in. But they were often in contemplation. I mean, smokers know that smoking cigarettes is not good, right? Most would say, if I could, I would. If it was easy, I would. I would quit using. I would quit smoking. So thinking about changing, knowing that there is some concern, but we still have our buts. For whatever reason, we have reasons that we're not quite there yet. We are experiencing ambivalence. So I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Preparation is when a person has made the decision to make a change and now they have to decide how they're going to go about it. It doesn't necessarily mean that they made a formal plan, a fancy plan, but it does mean that they've thought about some steps that they could take. So it might be, getting rid of all of the cookies in the pantry and, packing their lunch when they go to work or school, or deciding they're going to go to the gym 3 days a week, whatever it may be. But they decide on some ways that they're going to try to make that change. And when they start to make those changes, they actually give it a try, then they're in the action stage. And it doesn't mean that we don't move around. Definitely we can move back and forth through these stages for sure. And maybe we take some steps but realize we need to take more, so we go back to preparation. But essentially action is starting to test the waters. We're working on different ways to make those changes. And then ultimately we want to get to maintenance, which is where those changes become more like a habit, right? They're the new normal. And some will say that people might exit this wheel of change, so to speak, but ultimately we probably have to stay in maintenance in some way. And that's one of the things about support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous, is that even though a person might be very stable in their recovery, going to those meetings keeps them aware and mindful, and that's part of maintenance. So ambivalence, this dilemma of, I want to, but I don't want to, feeling two different ways, right? At the same time, it's actually usually kind of uncomfortable. But there's nothing really wrong. It's a normal part of most human behavior and behavior change to feel those mixed feelings about it, that we do recognize the harm of that behavior. We probably recognize the benefits of changing that behavior, but we're still attracted to the status quo, right? It's comfortable. There's something comforting about it, and so making a change can be very overwhelming. So this is very normal for us to feel that way, and we don't have to completely resolve the ambivalence to start making changes. And in some ways we live with a lot of ambivalence in our lives day to day. We often have mixed feelings, right? We might be ambivalent about what to order on the menu, right? Or ambivalent about what do I pick out at the main dish, right? Whatever you're going to eat, whatever you're going to do, what movie you're going to watch. So we often feel ambivalence. It's very normal, and we just figure out, what we're willing to live with, I guess, in terms of that ambivalence. So being ready will enable. So let's think about motivation. And then if a person has a lot of confidence in their ability to make a particular, I'm going to say this is relevant to a particular change, because you could have a totally different result depending on what it is you're interested in changing. So it's very contextual. So depending on what you want to change, you could feel very confident and place a high importance on it. So that's the person who is able to get into the action stage and they're making changes, right? But someone might have low importance. They might be very confident that, when I decide to do that, I'm sure I can. I just don't want to right now. It's not that important to me, right? A person could have high importance and say, this is really important. I really do want to do something about it. Sometimes when we have like health scares, I'm like, oh gosh, I really, I'm worried about that. My blood pressure is too high, or my cholesterol is too high, or whatever it is. And then we are thinking, yeah, I really do need to make a change, but I just don't think I can. I don't feel very confident about changing the way I do things, right? And then ultimately, a person could have low importance and low confidence. So particularly when they're, I mentioned the person who feels very hopeless, there's a very low degree of confidence, may also then place low importance on the change because they don't feel like they can do it anyway. So they'll just tell you, right, it's not very important, or they tell themselves, it's just not that important. So that's another challenge then, is how do we help the person actually develop importance and confidence, right? So we have more that we got to work on. And there's different reasons why a person may have low confidence, or different reasons why that their importance level may be lower. And there could be other factors that play into that. For example, somebody who's dealing with depression. So those would need to be addressed in order to help build their motivation. But let's think about low motivation. I'm going to take a teenager because I have one. And so, the low motivated teenager, what are they like? What do they do or not do? They may not care about their grades, right? Their room might be a mess. They don't care, right, that things are messy. They've got 5 dishes in their room. They may avoid conversations with their parents, right? So they place low importance on grades, or low importance on their connection with their parents, or low importance on keeping a clean environment, right? They may also have low confidence, like low confidence in their ability to have good grades. Maybe they're feeling, a lack of confidence about their ability to perform at school. So, we tend to look at them, we think they're lazy, they're not motivated, right? But is the teenager necessarily 100% not motivated? Are they motivated for something? Yes, right? They are. They're often motivated about their friendships, maybe the latest party, the latest single by Lana Del Rey, who snapped who, right? Who blocked who? I should have put who blocked who, right? That's usually a source of gossip. So those kinds of things might be important to them. They might be confident enough to at least go attend the party, even though they question themselves the whole time, but they're not completely absent of confidence, right? So they have motivation for certain things. And so the trick is to figure out, how do you take what they are motivated for and link that back to, well, how would keeping your room clean help you with all of these things that are important to you? How would getting good grades help you in terms of all of these things that are important to you? So what is important to a person is really based on their value system. So what is important to you? So if you want to think about, you want to try to build your motivation, one thing is to think about what you value. Try to identify my suggestion is to identify your top 10 values, what's most important to you, and then think about how your goal, the thing that you wanted to change, how in line is that with your values? If the value is like my family, and if I describe that value to you, like it's important, like not just that I have them or spend time with them, but I like to take care of them. That's very important to me, to be one of the caretakers in the family. And my goal is to lose weight and get more physically fit. So if I did that, how does this align up with my value? Well, I could live longer and feel better, so I could be there to take care of them, right? So they do fit. It does align together. Then let's think about, how do you build up that importance? Well, you have to think about those top values, and what are you doing now that actually kind of violates those values? How does your status quo get in the way of you sort of demonstrating what's important to you, demonstrating your values? And how would you benefit by making this change? So this is part of the importance, is partly about your reasons and how those reasons tie into your values. So if you want to make the change more important, build that, make that discrepancy bigger, right? So it's thinking about, how do I benefit, and how does it benefit what's important to me, and what might it cost me if I don't make this change? So what are the bad things that could happen or will happen if I don't make this change? So those are reasons for change. And then to address confidence, you want to think about what have you been successful at changing in the past. It doesn't have to be the same behavior. It could be something else that you changed in the past. So what have you done before where you were successful? And how did you do that? What steps did you take? We could say what was different, what was different then. What could you take from that, what you did in the past, and apply that to your current situation? So you're kind of identifying some of your strengths, right? What are your strengths? So not just your values, but your strengths. What skills or resources do you need to help you be more confident? So sometimes it's things like, do you need like there's log books you can buy out there for, tracking your health. So whether it's eating, but it's also, there's one for, there's a bunch of them, but there's one I got for exercise. So it has different things in it. I can track my exercise, what days I did it, what exercises I did, that kind of thing. And so what kinds of resources do you need? But also part of confidence, and I kind of briefly mentioned it, and it probably deserves a little bit more time than I'm giving it, but having hope is a big part of confidence. They're linked in together. And if you don't have enough hope about the future, it's hard to have confidence in your ability to change. We tend to, if we don't have hope, we feel hopeless, then we tend to feel helpless and demoralized and think, why should I even try, right? So feeling, hope for your future and hope for, part of it could be for that particular change, so envisioning that could be helpful, but just having a sense of hope in general, feeling positive about the future is also an important part of this. So where can you find inspiration? Where do you get that from? And there's different suggestions actually in my book for different ways that you can look for inspiration. You can create a vision board. Sometimes looking up, different things like belonging to, say, like a Facebook community. So you get information or you get support from people going through the same thing. So inspiration and seeking support, having a good support system is also a big predictor of successful change. So think about which of those things that you need to do or could do to build your confidence. So personal change, it requires you to see that discrepancy between your reality and your realistic ideal self, right? So what is that for you? And so that helps create a certain amount of ambivalence, like, oh yeah, I should or I want to, wait, but. So we want to acknowledge our ambivalence, and we don't always want to focus on our excuses to not change. We may look at barriers and how can we overcome barriers, but we don't want to ask ourselves, why are we not motivated? We need to ask, what are we motivated for, right? And so part of that discrepancy and that ambivalence is that we realize that something is important to us. What do we value? What are our goals? And that do we have that self-efficacy, that confidence and hope, at least enough to get started. So, you don't need to be 100% ready, willing, and able to make a change. But it does require a certain amount of awareness and conscious effort. And once you get the ball rolling, usually that's the idea. And that, do we reward ourselves? Do we reinforce that when we're making progress and taking steps, that we reinforce that in ourselves so that helps us continue. So we eventually get more and more confident the more that we stick with it. So my book is available at Amazon.com. But if you want to try to win a free one, all right, so I got the book right here. It's filled with, I don't know, I think it's like over 100 exercises, I think. A lot of therapists and health coaches have purchased it so that they can use them with their clients as well. It is written as a self-help book, But there's lots of exercises that help you look at what is your goal, what do you want, what are your values, what are your strengths, how could you use those strengths to help you be more motivated. Let's see, what else do I do? I have activities that help you think about confidence and get more confident. How do you make a good plan for change? How do you get inspired? How do you build more hope? So there's a lot of different things to do in this particular book. So if you're ready for the trivia question to try to win the book, okay? So you're gonna have to come up here because I can't hear anything. So if you think you know the answer, come on up. You can make a guess, okay? You ready? What well-known Fleetwood Mac song is the only one to have songwriting credit attributed to all members? It's like they're all 5 members, right? Anybody have a guess? It's a well-known song. What are some Fleetwood Mac songs? Gabby? Yes! It's The Chain. My student, yay. All right, so that is, most of the people in here know that, so Dr. Robinson and I play in Mary's Wish. Those are our upcoming gig dates through April 29th. You can like us on Facebook and Instagram. And any questions or anything? Or you can come up after if you want to ask me questions. I'll be here for a little bit. And I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.